Welcome to the SAIT lab, where today we learn how to be detectives. Scientists are a lot like detectives. Instead of a tweed hat and a magnifying glass, we have our own ways of looking at clues to solve puzzles. So today's puzzle are these two samples right in front of us, and our job is to determine what these samples are. The first thing you should do is always look for more clues. So take out your pens and pencils and write down in your notebook what do you see the differences are between these two samples. So in the very first sample, if you look closely, you see a blackish blue color all across the water profile. The second sample, on the other hand, the water looks very clear, but there is a sheen on top which looks brown, and if you look from the top, there are different droplets that are formed on the surface. In order to identify what the characteristics of the sample is, one simple test is to touch the sample and see. But since we don't know what these samples are, and if you don't have any gloves, the best way to do that is by taking a paper towel from your kitchen. Ask your parents to give you one sheet of paper towel, fold it nicely so that you have a nice thick end on both sides. With that, take the one side and dip it just a little bit on the first sample. What do you observe? You see that while the paper towel has not been differently colored, there's only a slight blue tinge from the sample that is observed in the paper towel, and you can see that the water starts rising immediately on the paper towel. For sample 2, take the opposite side of the set paper towel and dip it in a way that you only touch the top surface that is there on the sample. Interesting. What we see is that while the paper towel got wet, there is a large brown portion that is right on the top. So what does step 2 tell us? The blue color that is present in the sample is completely dissolved in the entire sample, whereas the brown sheen that we observe in sample number 2 is separate from the water phase that is present below it. So that tells you the top part is likely insoluble in the water phase. So what comes to mind when you think of things that are insoluble in water? Pencil, the crayons you color with, rocks, sand, but how many of those things float on the surface of water? We now come to step 3, determining the chemical properties of sample 1 and 2. To do so, I have a small beaker containing some dish soap. So I'll add a couple of drops to sample 1 to see what happens. As we can see, the addition of the dish soap to sample 1 did not change any of its properties. Now let's repeat this step for sample 2 and see what happens. Now look at that. As soon as we add dish soap to sample number 2, the contaminant that formed the top layer of the sample ends up moving to the wall and dispersing all the way. Now the question is, what does this tell us? So based on everything that we've learned from our steps 1, 2, and 3, we can determine that the contaminant that is present in sample number 1 is likely hydrophilic, which means water-loving since it's soluble in water. It does not react once detergent is put in it, and once you put the paper towel in it to check, it stays as a single phase. However, for sample number 2, we can likely conclude that the contaminant present in it is likely hydrophobic, which means it does not like water. This could be seen from the properties we observed that using the paper towel, the contaminant was present as a separate phase than the water. It was previously insoluble in water and stayed at the top. And on the addition of the dish soap, it ends up being soluble in water. With that, the final conclusions can say that sample 1 likely consists of something of a food dye or a food coloring, whereas sample 2 likely comprises of oil. Now, go back into the time when you washed your hands with just water and did not use any soap. You notice that sometimes your hands are still sticky. That is because sometimes the dirt that is stuck to your hands comprises a little bit of oil or grease or such impurities. It's only after you use soap, those impurities can get soluble in water and can wash off your hands. So during these times, especially with COVID being around, remember to always wash your hands with both soap and water. So thank you for joining me today in this session of trying to solve the puzzle of what these two samples are. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you.